Link. Yeah. Sorry.
All right, we're gonna go ahead and get rolling here. Y'all, good morning. Um, Start with coming here a little heavy hearted with the untimely passing of Manny Ballinger. We're gonna open up with a prayer from. If you'll do the honors, please. I would appreciate you. Open up a little word prayer.
Thanks, your chair. Bow your heads. Lord, thank you, and thank you for joining us together again, once again, to do the people's work. We love you. We appreciate you giving us the time, energy, and the ability to fellowship in this manner to do the good work for the right reasons for the people of this great state of Georgia. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you for that. Chairman Hatch, if you don't mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Wiedauer, and as you stated earlier, and um, we'd all be remiss if we didn't cherish the time we shared with Chair Ballinger over the years. She was a strong lady, a classy lady, and she was and I'll say it, a hell of a fighter. She fought for things that she believed in. And she was very passionate about that, and she fought hard against cancer that ultimately took her life. But she was a strong lady, and I'm looking forward to seeing her husband and her son Henry, who was the bright point in her life. I mean, all you had to do is be around her a little while. She was talking about Henry or ask about Henry, and she lit up. So none of us know the battles that she had with cancer, but we could sometimes see it. But she fought hard, and my prayers are with her family and rejoicing in where she is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. If everyone would join me in a moment of silence for Mandy and her family. All right, we will move on. With that, we'll keep a tight schedule today, because I know that many of us are trying to get to the visitation later today. But with that, this will be the final hearing meeting on House Study Committee on Gaming prior to its conclusion. So with that, we're going to jump in. I think we have Les, and I think he is on Zoom. Is that correct? All right, so let me get that going here. Mr. Bernal, do you hear us?
I do. Can you hear me?
Perfectly. Thank you so much. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. And let me just briefly share my screen here. I got just a handful of slides. Get set up. Okay. Can you see my screen? Can you all see my screen?
We still see you right now.
Okay. Not sure why here. One second, please. Oh, I see. How about now?
Yes, sir. We have you now.
All right, thank you. All right, good morning, committee members. My name is Les Burnell. I'm the National Director for Stop Predatory Gambling. Um, our values is that we believe that people are worth more than money. We're a national nonprofit organization that we're in all 50 states. We attract members of all political stripes, and our mission is to reveal the truth behind commercialized gambling operators, to advocate for those who've suffered harm, to prevent more victims, and to champion policy reforms that stop predatory gambling. And I want to make clear that we do not accept financial contributions from commercialized gambling interests. So I always like to start briefly with kind of why I'm so passionate about this issue, why I've dedicated the prime years of my life to this. I grew up in Massachusetts, and like many of you, when you're in elementary school, one of the first things we learn about is the principle of no taxation without representation. It's one of our core democratic principles. Well, today, pretty much no matter where you live in our country, including in the state of Georgia, we have a system of taxation by exploitation. State governments are adding more and more extreme forms of gambling into the public square under the guise of raising revenues. But it's caused incredible financial harm and addiction for millions and millions of American families and hundreds of thousands of citizens in Georgia itself. So to us, we believe the institution of predatory gambling has proven itself to be a cruel and oppressive institution. And it's time that instead of debating more expansion, start to look at what is already happening both to the people of Georgia and across our country. So with that, I always like to start with a simple slide, like what predatory gambling is not. Okay, so it's because the commercialized gambling industry, when they testify before you, earlier this year, a lot of them like to blend all these forms of gambling under one umbrella. But what predatory gambling is not, it's not the Friday night poker game. It's not the local bingo night at the Catholic Church. It's not buying a square in the Super Bowl office pool. It's not the March Madness brackets with your friends from college or the guys from work, or it's not a friendly wager on the golf course. Those are forms of gambling, but those are social forms of gambling. What predatory gambling is it's when powerful corporate gambling interests partner with state governments to use commercialized gambling, okay, to exploit and defraud citizens and their communities. So when gambling is run as a business, okay, and this is one of arguably the most important facts as you look at this industry compared to any other industry that comes before you, is that when commercialized gambling is run as a business, it creates a predatory and adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and the gambler. They're trying to take you down. The only time the gambling operator can win, the only way they're successful is getting you to lose. And so it's a very perverse relationship, especially when it's done as a business. So my goal today in the few minutes I have with you, I'm just going to share a few truths with you about commercialized gambling. Okay. And there's several more than these, but I'm only going to touch on a handful of them. But truth number one, and I think this is the most important one, is that commercialized gambling is highly addictive, but that's not why it's illegal. Okay. It's illegal because it's a con. It's a form of consumer financial fraud in the family of price gouging and false advertising. That's what the House always means. That's what the House always wins. That's what it means. So it's not illegal in Georgia right now for us to have a friendly wager on a Falcons game or the Georgia Bulldogs game with each other. Like those social forms of gambling are not illegal. What's illegal is none of us can run the House. And if the state of Georgia were to legalize casinos or online forms of gambling, these forms of gambling are still going to be illegal with one exception. It's only legal if you get a regional monopoly in partnership with state government. For everybody else, it's illegal. And the reason why is because it's a form of consumer financial fraud. It's a con. So if you have it in Las Vegas, it's different. People hopping on a plane, not a big enough going doing it every day. But when you put Las Vegas on Main Street in Georgia, or you put Las Vegas into every smartphone in every dorm room in the state of Georgia, it becomes very different. It's that adversarial relationship where they're trying to take you down. Next slide here. So when people say, well, what does that mean? It's a con. Well, this is the best image I've ever seen, just kind of capturing the math behind commercialized gambling, what the house always means, what it really means. And this is what makes it different than any other business. So this is from, I think, one of probably the best book ever written on the modern gambling industry. It was called Addiction by Design by Dr. Natasha Schull, who was then at MIT and is now at NYU. And she had a graphic. The simple graphic shows on the left-hand side, you see the money. You start with a whole bunch of money, then over time, it's mathematically a guarantee that you're going to end up losing all your money, especially if you're in a playing against slot machines or other forms when there's a decent sized house edge. But it's inevitable that you're going to lose your money. Okay, and then the little graph below there shows that that's actually a slot machine experience with these high rapid gambling games are the most valuable, most profitable for the industry. It's why they want them so much. And so you start out, you certainly win a little bit along the way, but it's a mathematical certainty that the more you play the game and the more frequently you play it, you're going to lose not just a little bit of money, enormous sums of money. Okay, so that's why at its core, it's a con. And this con is really an extension of a government program. It's only legal, again, if you partner with the state, which kind of leads into truth number 2. And this is probably on a personal level, kind of gets back to this theme of taxation by exploitation. Is, they're going to stand up and say, we're going to regulate this and so on. When there's a fundamental and irreconcilable conflict of interest between the state so-called regulating commercialized gambling, whether it's in the form of online gambling, regional casinos, or state lotteries, versus the public good. There's an inherent conflict of interest there that is fundamental, and there's no way around it, because the state, whether it's the state of Georgia or any other state, it is charged with protecting the public from the very business practices that generate more revenue for the state. So the whole reason, the major reasons why, the primary reason why the state gets into this business is they want the money. But if the state meaningfully protected citizens from predatory practices, there's no money in this business. Okay, it doesn't. By far, it's a huge loser for the state. So that conflict of interest, leads to this false claim that we're going to regulate this. It's like putting Dracula in charge of the blood bank. And I don't mean to be that sarcastic about that. It's the reality of it. It's the more money, you start off with $1 a week scratch-off tickets. Now you're selling $50 scratch-off tickets. And so a lot of citizens in Georgia and across the country, they're always amazed, that they think I'm going to look at what's already legal in the state of Georgia, right? So when these guys stand up before you and say, we're going to regulate casinos, we're going to regulate online sports gambling for the public and protect people. Let's look at what the state of Georgia already does. And I could have done countless examples of this, especially how they market to kids. But this is just an example of what quote unquote regulated gambling looks like. This is the conflict of interest in its full glory. Okay, this is a $50 scratch-off ticket that's sold in low-income neighborhoods across the state of Georgia. Okay, as you know, the state of Georgia has a minimum wage of $7.25 an hour. That's the minimum wage for most citizens in the state. You got to work a full day's labor at a minimum wage job in Georgia before you can lose it in 5 seconds on what we're looking at is a government program encouraging citizens to buy $50 scratch-off tickets that are exempt from truth in advertising regulations. Again, predatory and adversarial relationship between the gambling operator and the gambler. This is in its full glory. This is what regulated gambling already looks like in Georgia. So these claims that you're going to regulate it to protect the public, it's not true. It hasn't been true for 30 years, and it certainly isn't true today in 2025. So the third truth here is, a major reason why so many families in Georgia don't experience financial peace. And I'm a huge Dave Ramsey guy. I think, his framing around, personal finance and all that, I believe in that. I got my family doing it, and millions of people across this country do it. Many of your constituents practice financial peace. The program pushed by Dave Ramsey, which is one of the top 10 podcasts in the country. So I use that phrase specifically on purpose. It's like your financial peace, not being in debt, being in a good place financially with your family. But many families don't experience financial peace in your state many of your constituents, because of the extreme forms of commercialized gambling being sponsored by state government. This idea of selling $50 scratch-off tickets to citizens making $7.25 an hour. So let's look at what it looks like in totality in Georgia. So you've heard, like, the last couple of years, we've heard so many stories about, hey, the rising price of eggs and the impact it's having on family budgets in Georgia. There's got to be dozens and dozens of stories. This is one example of it. So let's look at what is the financial impact today, without even talking about these new forms of predatory gambling that lobbyists are trying to bring into your state, whether they're casinos or online gambling. Let's just look at what's happening right today in your state. So what's the financial impact of a government program, which is what predatory gambling is? Georgia citizens are on a downward spiral to lose $11.2 billion of their personal wealth to commercialized gambling sponsored by state government in Georgia over the next 5 years. Okay, $11.2 billion. Just in the last year, fiscal year, where numbers were available, these are all from the Georgia Lottery's own annual reports. So in FY 2024, your constituents collectively lost $2.24 billion of their personal wealth to predatory gambling. Okay. Again, particularly in the form of state lottery, the Georgia State Lottery. And to put that into a number that we can all relate to, that's $4,261 every minute that your constituents are losing to a government program in the form of predatory gambling. $4,261 every minute. Like, that's a heck of a lot of eggs. That's life-changing financial losses for tens of thousands, in many cases hundreds of thousands of Georgia citizens. And that's, you're talking about the future of bringing these new forms again. You want to calculate the losses to online gambling and casinos are even far greater than that. But the last truth I'll leave you with here, and then happy to take any questions, is because we hear a lot. Kind of turn to the casino issue for a second. Besides the revenue aspect, we hear one of the main claims behind casinos in Georgia is, bringing them in. It's gonna be an economic engine. You're a lower income community, you're an economically challenged region. We have an answer for you. Like, we're going to bring in casinos. And so, there's probably more than 1,000 regional casinos now across the country. The evidence is overwhelming about the impact they've had on this. And so I saw many of the speakers that were signed up prior hearings, and many of them had ties to the gambling industry. They have a financial interest in this stuff. So you're not really getting a kind of the full picture of it. And I'm always amazed when you see these, I think you have a sheriff from one town in Alabama, just look at the truth of this is, and this is from their own numbers. So the state of Pennsylvania, which is one of the biggest predatory gambling states in the country today, you go to the Pennsylvania Gambling Commission's, there's one of their own press releases. There were roughly 15,000 people that work at the state's casinos. Okay, and that includes part-time jobs. All right, so I think there's roughly 10 to 12 casinos across the state. Okay, and most people who are addicted to gambling, they never come forward for help. Okay, so it's like a tip of the iceberg. On there, they have something called a self-exclusion list. From a press release from the Pennsylvania Gambling Commission, said that there are more than 30,000 citizens have signed up, okay, for self-exclusion. So that's that number. 92% of citizens never come forward for help. So the fact that you had 30,000 people come forward and they said, these casinos in the state of Pennsylvania are ruining my life. You have to ban them from, I need you to ban myself from them, to voluntarily come forward for that. There's 15,000 people that work at the state's casinos, including part-time jobs. And so the actual amount of addicts is far greater than the amount of any kind of job that's associated with a casino. Okay, and so last point I'll leave to sign off with this is, many of the gambling operators that come before you and the gambling lobbyists, we like to call them the lifeboat men. Because it's very reminiscent of the famous scene. If most of you have seen the film The Titanic, so in the movie, the boat is sinking, and you have this mad scramble, for the lifeboats. There's a very few amount of lifeboats, and you have all these wealthy guys who protect their own interests, who just care about their own interests. They're in the lifeboat. Okay. Meanwhile, thousands of people are drowning in the ocean surrounding them. and they all shield their eyes from the harm of it. So these predatory gambling operators, they're coming to you, despite the incredible evidence of, the financial harm their industry causes, the amount of massive addiction that it causes. They shield their eyes to all of that because their interests are protected. So many of the people that have come before this committee have a financial interest in having commercialized gambling, predatory gambling expand in your state. And so they're more carried about protecting their interests. So what I ask your committee and the members of the Georgia legislature is, there's tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of citizens in Georgia who are in facing financial challenges. They need your help. And this is like the antithesis. Predatory gambling, expanding it in the form of online gambling and casinos, it's the complete opposite of bringing help to them. So we need less lifeboat men and more legislators from all parties who stand up and say, we're going to put the interest of the people first over money. So that I appreciate the opportunity to say a few words today, and happy to take any questions.
Mr. Mnaw, I appreciate you being here, and certainly appreciate your testimony, because I can assure you this committee has sought to see the full picture, and our doors have been open for any and all testimony for 4 meetings. So I appreciate you being here today. I do see a question, Chairman Stevens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I appreciate your presentation today. We now have 12 states left out of the 50 that do not do sports betting, and that's basically what we're here today. From what I'm understanding, you're really opposed to any gambling or gaming at all. Would that pretty much sum it up?
No, actually, it's not. That's definitely not our position. Is let the people of Georgia do what they want. It's our people in Georgia are already free to place a sports bet. What's illegal is it's illegal to be the house in Georgia. So that's the main piece. What we want to see is state governments like Georgia get out of the gambling business, because it's been an epic policy failure when your constituents are losing, almost $4,200 every minute. When they're selling $50 scratch-off tickets to citizens making $7.25 an hour. The evidence is overwhelming. It's failed. So let the people of Georgia gamble freely. Allow gambling, free game. People gamble privately, locally, games in their homes, whatever they want to do. Take state government out of this business and put state government back on the side of the people of Georgia.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman, and I believe that's kind of where we're going. These 12 states that do not do sports betting specifically, they don't regulate it at all, which is, and the massive amount of money that goes offshore that's unregulated don't create any mechanisms for folks with problem gambling. I only want to go back to where we started, and this man to the right, the chairman here, voted on this bill back 32 years ago, and the first ticket was lottery ticket. Gambling ticket was June 29th of 1993. Since that time, 2.25 million Georgians, not anybody else from any other state, received the Hope Scholarship, and also 2.20 4-year-olds have gotten pre-K. That's nearly 4.5 million folks that have benefited. Do you have any comment on that at all, as far as the benefits that have come out of gaming?
Yeah. So I think it's fascinating when we talk about the financial harm that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Georgians have experienced here to this. So you have essentially middle class. When this is right from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, has shown that a good portion of those college scholarships have gone to middle class and upper class families in Georgia, at the expense of hundreds of thousands of Georgians who are a lower income, who are losing almost $4,200 every minute to send a handful of Georgian citizens to college. It's like the American dream perverted. We're supposed to live in a country where we have no royal blood. We're all supposed to have an equal shot at this. And the idea that a handful of people benefit, that the so-called lifeboat men are benefiting at the expense of hundreds of thousands of Georgians, that's the antithesis of what government's supposed to exist for. We talk about having, this is the ultimate big government program. Take the government out of it. The idea that you need to have a state lottery to send kids in Georgia to college, it's a lie. The only reason, we all know politically, the only reason why they tied it to the Hope Scholarship, because there's no grassroots movement for a lottery in Georgia, or online gambling or casinos. They have to tie it to these carrots to create this impression that somehow the public is benefiting. No one in Georgia is paying less taxes today because the fact that citizens are losing, are going to lose with more than $11 billion of their personal wealth to predatory gambling, to the Georgia lottery, without even including these other potential forms. It's been an epic policy failure by almost every measure.
Thank you for your testimony.
Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think my question had already been asked by my friend to the left of me. But are you saying that possibly we need to do away with the lottery in Georgia?
I'm telling you that the state lottery, we talk, states love to talk about their laboratories of democracy. That's one of the big things that Georgia and other states, most times we do these policies with the idea of improving people's lives. The idea that a handful of Georgians have benefited because they got some scholarships to go to public universities in the state, while hundreds of thousands of other citizens have suffered. Like, that's the complete opposite of what the role of government is supposed to be. The idea that it's been a cruel and oppressive institution. You start this. Why would anybody? Your committees support the idea of state government selling $50 scratch-off tickets in communities where people make $7.25 an hour. Like, let people gamble what they want to freely. This is the ultimate example of government overreach. In its purest form.
Further question, if I might. You're talking about experiment in democracy. You do realize in Georgia that the panel that you're talking to today and all of the legislature, we can't legalize gambling. That's only left up to the people of Georgia through a constitutional amendment. People can hammer on all the legislators all they want to, but when we've seen the results of the lottery and we've seen the polls and we've seen everything else, it takes a constitutional amendment. So are you saying that we should deny the people of Georgia that opportunity to vote if that's their wishes?
I'm glad you asked me that question, because my background, before I did this work, when my primary background was in running political campaigns. And so one of the things I love to ask legislators is, because I hear legislators say, well, let the people vote on this, right? First of all, there's a reason why the forefathers had it in the Constitution to make it a very difficult threshold for an issue like this, to have to get approved. So that there's a reason why it was in the first place. But think about for a second, if you this idea that we're going to let the people vote, it's a very disingenuous argument, because it's not like there's going to be a fair fight on this. The idea, imagine your own reelection, right? All of you work hard in your respective districts. If you had an opponent that's going to outspend you 3-1 in an election, you're going to say, no matter your merits, this is going to be a tough race. It's going to be really tough. I'm being outspent 3-1. Now imagine being outspent 10,000-1. And all of a sudden, we're going to stand up and say, oh, the people have spoken. The people have spoken, yet the proponents of this are going to spend tens of millions of dollars in your state to try to ram it across the finish line. The people of Missouri, okay, the gambling interest there in partnership with the pro sports teams, they spent more than $40 million in this last cycle to drag across a statewide referendum. They outspent opponents, like at least 200-1, 300-1, and they barely won statewide, like maybe 2,000 votes. There's no grassroots movement for this. So the idea that we're going to let the people vote, I would respectfully say to you, it's not it's not an honest argument, because it's a con. The idea that there's not going to be a fair fight here, there's not going to be real merits. Talking about the impacts it's going to have on Georgia families. All we're going to hear about is money for the Hope Scholarship, or jobs created and so on. So that's part of the con of this.
You speak about being a disingenuous argument. You talk about the possibilities of money being spent. But it's been my experience, whether it be a political campaign for an individual or for a particular cause, that the public makes themselves informed. And, no matter how much advertising or whatever is spent, we've seen candidates that have run for office that spent untold amounts of money. But at the end of the day, it's all about the character and the platform. And that's the thing that I'm concerned when you talk about being disingenuous. And it sounds to me like you're almost saying that the public doesn't have a wit about them to differentiate.
Yeah. No, I think respectfully, I think the public knows very well what this issue is. And that's why there's no grassroots movement for this in Georgia. That the polls that you see, all this lobbying campaign is driven by powerful financial interests who stand to benefit immensely from this. That's why this isn't about letting the people vote. The real phrase for this is let us buy the vote. And so again, in your own reelection, you're telling me that despite your merits, you went on the ballot and someone else spent you 1,000 to 1. You would honestly say to yourself, someone who's been in politics for quite some time, that yeah, that was I got my message out. People knew what I stood for. And I would say respectfully, in most cases, I mean, in a state rep race, whatever, clearly it's a lot easier to get your message out. But statewide, someone's out spending you $40 million, $50 million. Again, I think it's disingenuous that somehow you're going to have a meaningful we don't need to speculate. Like the last 30 years, just look at the referendum campaigns that have been run on the gambling industry. They don't talk about the impacts of this. They're not going to talk about their business practices or any of that. They're going to talk about Hope Scholarship and rescuing some community that's economically challenged, and not talk about the business in any way. I mean, there's nothing. I would say it's misinformation. Frankly, it's the ultimate misinformation campaign. It's part of the con of this business.
Mr. Brown, I'm so sorry to cut. We do have one more question. I want to get off of how disingenuous we may or may not be. And get this question on, because we need to get on to the next presenter. I promised everybody times today. Mr. Williams, you have a question?
Mr. Chairman, I was listening very closely about what happens in statewide races, and my question, this is kind of a lead up. I remembered, to my great dismay, 2002, a sitting governor spent $22 million and an opponent spent $2 million, and the opponent won. So you'd always buy the election if issues are presented. My fear is this: we seem to have forgotten about prohibition. We tried legislating sin that some folk call sin. It was a dismal failure. I have enough faith in Georgia voters that this con will not work if that's not their desire. What are your feelings about the difference in prohibition and the lack of, and today's question?
Sure. Great question. I appreciate it. And it's kind of right. It's a great spot to end on. People in Georgia are already free to place a sports bet and to gamble. So this notion that the word prohibition is ever used is, again, part of this dishonest campaign pushed by gambling operators and lobbyists. It's already legal in Georgia for people to place a bet amongst themselves and gamble amongst themselves. What's illegal is to be the house. Okay, so when we talk about prohibition, that applies to alcohol. Gambling is already legal in Georgia. Our movement nationally for Stop Predatory Gambling is about abolition. It's about abolishing a state institution in Georgia and across our country of predatory gambling that is cruel and oppressive. Let people gamble what they want to. Get the government and these powerful corporations to stop exploiting the people of Georgia in their communities and their homes at the expense of all of us.
Mr. I appreciate you being here. Thank you. But we are going to move on. Ms. Jeannie Seaver.
Thank you. Give me 1 second here.
So what?
Click the slideshow button.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Let's see. If I know tech, we're in big trouble. If you want to sit over there till you're the clicking button, you can either sit there and click these buttons will move your slides. Oh, I'd be able to see that. Okay. It's going to be on all these boards for everything. Okay, I'll go to the clicker if that. No, I'll stand. Okay. Sorry.
So my name is Jeannie Seaver, and I am very grateful for the opportunity again to be able to come here and talk to you about the harms of gambling. First and foremost, we are a national organization. And like you had said before, I've come from a family of addiction. So I know, and like I said before, many of you, I'm sure, have been affected by the addiction in your families and how horrible and devastating that can be. But I'm not a paid lobbyist. I'm not paid anything. I'm not here to benefit financially in any way. I am here to be the voice of mothers, fathers, parents, grandparents, athletes. Athletes have lost their careers because of gambling and the harms and the addiction that has been infiltrated into our state. And so I am here to try to educate y'all a little bit more on some additional information that I provided you. But gambling expansion would forever change Georgia. I had given Brian a printout copy for you. There's a new report from Lancet that holds industrials accountable, playing to extinction, and the commercial detriments of gambling and its harms. And it really digs into suicide. The gambling industry emphasizes on the gambler's responsibility rather than the industry's, diverts attention from the practices of the industry, generates stigma and shame for those harmed, downplays serious harms caused by gambling, and contributes to the suicide toll. The Lance report, and some people are not familiar with this suicidality definition, but basically it's a being in a constant suicide state. And 1 out of 5 that become addicted to gambling attempt suicide, and 1 out of 10 accomplish that of committing suicide. I have to bring up again, a few of these slides are from my last presentation, but I think it's really important. The gambling industry is targeting our kids on their iPhones and video games. They're encouraging them to go and play slot machines with people like Spider-Man and all these different characters to get them to learn to swipe side, swipe up, and that eventually will suck them into to gambling. And we all know that the slot machines is the worst addiction of any addiction in this nation. Was online sports gambling a mistake? Online sports books are making big money and gamblers are paying the price. I've got a video, it's about 8 minutes long, and I think it's really important. I know sometimes my words, I can't get it all out. So I seeing it visually. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you to please, let's see. Donate later. I don't know, Brian, you might, it's wanting me to download some stuff and I didn't know if you wanted to. I'm so sorry, folks. Just cancel it. I don't know why it's doing it. I didn't do it last time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. This is what the link is pulling up. Is there a video here?
Yep, it's supposed to be a video from the link.
Let's see one. I see the script. Here, I'll show you. Shoot. Yeah, it's only what's pulling up. I'm trying to look. Is there a video maybe?
Shoot. I don't know why it's doing it because it worked before. It's really an important one to see. I don't know why the link is not working. Hold on. Let me pull it up. I was going to try to play it on my phone, but you guys wouldn't be able to see it.
Look it up. Is there a YouTube video we can just pull up or?
That one should have pulled it up. I don't know why it is because it says videos. I don't know. I don't know. I apologize. I don't know why it's not working because it worked fine last night. Yeah, something to do with Microsoft, I guess. Edge.
Here, I got you real quick. So let's get you back to the presentation.
So, I will go ahead. I don't know why it's not working, but I'll go ahead and get this link to you so you guys can watch that because it's really, really important to hear. Okay, I don't know if you've heard, you were also giving a printout of a recent article that was published on October 12th from the Rolling Stone titled An Unsafe Bet. There's a casino in everybody's pocket. For some men, it's near fatal gambling. FanDuels and DraftKings have paid king ransoms to each of the major sports leagues in exchange for the date and partnered with the AI firms to help target user habits. A study by the National Council of Problem Gambling have found that betting on campuses have surged 75%, and that 6% of students were addicted to gambling, or nearly double the national average. And then there was the Public Health Agency filed a class action consumer fraud lawsuit against DraftKings. A judge rejected the company's motion to exist. If there's college kids jumping out of windows, we need to see those counts to figure out why we have a moral obligation to those kids and their families and otherwise. And there's a link to that whole article, and you have a printout that you could look at. Despite the widespread of legalizing of sports betting, the offshore black market will continue. Billions of dollars. There's not anything that Georgia could do to keep that from happening. Legalized sports betting has not reduced the impact of illegal sports betting operators. So I just got back from a Stop Predatory Gambling conference, and I met this gentleman. His name is Rob Minnick. He is a gambling addict in recovery. So he made his last bet on November 12th, and now he plays videos on how to try to help folks that are addicted to gambling. And he has an average of impacting 15 million people monthly, and to help others and try to not make the same mistakes he did. So there is this video, and I pray that this works. It's an 11-minute video. He sent this message to the committee. I'm getting the same thing. What's up? What's up with this program? The software, Microsoft Edge or something, because it's
For videos, so I'll take a look. See how it works.
a Google Doc. There it is. Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's right.
Gambling addiction. I am now 26 years old, but I started gambling when I was 18 years old with daily fantasy sports. Today, I want to share a little bit about my story and the consequences that came for me, because I was someone that wasn't supposed to end up hooked to anything. I've had kind of this predetermined path laid out in front of me, and for anyone looking from the outside, it looked like I was doing completely fine. And I would follow that path and I'd be a success. So I wanted to just record this today to show you that this can happen to anyone. It doesn't happen to everyone, but imagine that it's your son, your daughter, your husband, your wife that's impacted. It kind of brings a personal feel to the reality that is gambling addiction. So, as mentioned, I started with daily fantasy sports. I grew up near Philadelphia. I'm from southern New Jersey, and we love our sports teams here. Unfortunately, the Phillies just got beat in the playoffs, which sucked, and the Eagles are not looking too hot. But it's a little bit easier today than it would have been 6 years ago. Because when I found out about daily fantasy sports through TV commercials, it was like, wow, I'm already watching these games. Now I can make money while I'm watching them. It's amazing. This is the best thing of all time. This is how I'm going to spend my time. This is how I'm going to spend my money. At the time, I was working at an ice cream store as an 18-year-old for $8.38 an hour. At the time, it was New Jersey's minimum wage. And I would put in a $5, $10 fantasy sports contest, and sometimes I would win $100. To me, at the time, it was like, why would I ever work if I can make money on these sports that I'm watching? I didn't necessarily even call it gambling back then, but that's exactly what it was. And very quickly, I quit my job and I only wanted to watch sports and put bets in. Within about a month of starting with daily fantasy sports, I had quit the job and I was already wanting more. I started doing regular sports betting. At the time, underage, I couldn't use the books that were beginning to advertise on TV, the FanDuels, the DraftKings of the world. So I was using a website called Bovada, which is licensed in Latvia, I think. It was a weird, like, legal gray area, but I was able to gamble. And then I found myself a bookie who extended me a line of credit. Early wins in my gambling then convinced me that everything would be fine, that I was a good gambler, that I could get better at gambling. And so if I had losses, which of course I started to have, I remembered the times that I would win. And remembering the times that I would win made me feel like no matter how bad a situation got, I could always gamble my way out of it. Now, again, I'm 18, turning 19 years old at this point. And my mindset is now I'm going to be a professional gambler. And if I lose, all I have to do is keep gambling and it'll fix my problems. Eventually, it backfired. March Madness 2018, University of Maryland, Baltimore County, for the first time in tournament history, upsets Virginia. It's the first time a 16 seed beat a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. I did not gamble on that game. And what it created in me was this intense fear of missing out. I couldn't possibly let them play their next game without having money on it. And basically, I took everything that I had with my bookie at the time and I bet on them to win versus Kansas State. They lost, naturally. And so as a now 19-year-old, I was faced with the decision. Do I tell my family what had happened or do I try to gamble my way out of it? Well, remembering that anytime I had my back against the wall in the past, I was able to gamble my way out of it, I got an extended credit line from the bookie and I put more money in. And within another day, I doubled my losses on spring training baseball. You see, by this point, I had been gambling a little bit over a year, and what had gone from small bets with my friends had progressed into a full-blown addiction already, 1 year in. I was at school in Washington, D.C. at Georgetown, and for all intents and purposes, I looked like I was doing well. My family was happy I was going to a good school. Everyone around me seemed to think I was fine, but I was totally preoccupied with gambling and nothing else meant anything. And as a young man, I was always told, go to school, get a good job, graduate, get a good job, and then work until you retire. Try to make a bunch of money. That was never what I wanted to do. I always wanted to do something different. And I fully convinced myself at the time that if I just got good enough at gambling, that could be my career. Told me that I was going to lose. No one told me I was supposed to lose. I knew implicitly that casinos make money, so I wasn't necessarily supposed to win, but I thought if I could just find the right value, if I could use the right strategy, I could beat the odds. And everywhere I looked, the internet, social media, all I saw was confirmation bias. Other people winning, people selling picks, people spinning slots and winning millions of dollars. That's when I was like, wow, I should give that a try. That looks awesome. Casino games. And right from the start, I was like, casino games are a little more risky, but it further justified in my head, sports betting is my investing, casino games is my fun. That pattern of risking everything, ending up with my back against the wall, and then getting more money, borrowing money from family, friends, or extended lines of credit from bookies, that would continue. And over the course of the 6 years that I gambled, I put myself into debt 6 different times, to the point where I actually couldn't see myself gambling out of it. I was working 2 jobs at a time, paying back family and friends, paying off credit cards. My whole life became debt repayment. And once I got off the hook, gambling. And there was even gambling during the debt repayment, because I had in my head that if I got a big win, it would solve all my problems. This was my life, and I was miserable. But despite all of the obvious signs that the gambling was making me miserable, I was convinced that I was miserable because I didn't find what I wanted to do. I couldn't find my purpose. I didn't like where I was. I didn't like my school. These were the thoughts I was having, and I said, I'm going to make a drastic change. I'm going to go study abroad in Australia. Little did I know, Australia has the worst gambling losses per capita in the world, and it fueled my gambling addiction over the couple of months I was there before COVID hit. When I came back, lockdowns. But all I was doing during lockdown was playing poker online, spinning slots online, gambling on whatever sports opened back up. First it was Korean baseball, then it was the NBA bubble. I was losing everything I could access, borrowing money from people, even taking advantage of loopholes in the unemployment stimulus at the time, making $13 of unemployment, but it was supplemented with a $600 a week stimulus. All of it, disposable income going into gambling. And at this point, I'm 21, 22 years old. 4 more years of that, and I get to this point, well, 3 more years of that, and I get to this point where I have a really drastic event that changed my life for the time being. I had had a big win, and I used the money to travel to Paris. And I told myself, I'll travel the world, I'll be my own boss, I don't have to work that normal job everyone told me I had to work. Once I landed, within 5 minutes of getting to the hotel, I was sitting on the toilet spinning a slot machine, losing all the money that I had saved for the trip. And I finally, at that point, 24 years old, asked myself, why did you just do that? And I didn't have an answer. For the first time, and I must have not been 24, I must have been closer to 23, I said, I don't know why I just did that. I need help. And I went and I sought out Gamblers Anonymous, and for a while it worked. I was staying away from gambling and I was moving on. But honestly, it just felt like I was counting the number of days that it had been since doing the thing that I loved to do most, which was gamble. I went from being an honor student, being an athlete, being someone that was on the right path, to being someone that felt like gambling was his only identity, all within a couple of years. Now, it can happen to everyone, but it can happen to anyone. And so for a while, I was clean. Then I started to feel bad for myself. Go back, just give it one more try. It can be different. You see all these people online, it's going good for them. Why can't it go good for you? And so on November the 12th of 2022, I placed a sports bet in the morning. It won. I felt guilty. I wanted the money out. I wanted to reset my bet date, get back into a support group meeting, and get better. But they wouldn't cash me out. This particular sportsbook had a policy where if you made a deposit using an ACH deposit, you couldn't withdraw using the same payment method for 24 hours until after the deposit had cleared. So I said, that's unacceptable. I have to get this money out right now and close this account. Let me go to their casino that they partnered with in person in Pennsylvania and reason with them. I go and I say to the cashier, hey, I want my money. They said no. Same thing as the app said. And I turn around and I'm in a casino. It had been a couple of hours since my last bet, not a couple of months. I went on a 12-hour gambling binge where I would take out numerous cash advances, maxing out 3 different credit cards, putting myself into debt for the next 6 months, working 80 hours per week. But that's not what got me to stop gambling. What got me to stop gambling was during that session, I dropped money on the floor by accident. I panicked and I picked it up. I was scared I was going to get robbed. And when I finally had it all back in my hand, I started to laugh to myself because I had this thought: throw the money back on the floor, because someone else might pick it up and leave with it. But if you pick it up, you're just going to gamble it all away because you can't stop once you start. That's exactly what ended up happening. The reason that we're speaking today is because following that day, I started to make videos online about my story. Started to share that anyone can go down this path, but there is a path to recovery. And since November the 12th of 2022, I haven't placed a bet. We're talking today because I've been able to reach an audience because there's so many people across America and across the world struggling with gambling. And the resources are lacking. People don't know where to get help. People feel alone. People feel like they're the only person on earth that has this problem. Do you want that for your daughter? Do you want that for your son? Do you want that for your husband or your wife? Do you want that for yourself? Because I thought I was the smartest guy in the room all the time, and I still ended up with a crippling gambling addiction. I don't want that for anyone else, which is why I do the work that I do, which is why I'm recording this right now. We have the opportunity to talk. What's going to happen if we legalize this? What's going to happen if this is in the pockets of every young man, young woman, or anyone in your state? And everyone's going to get addicted to it. The ones that get addicted to it are going to fuel the success of the companies that are pushing these apps onto our citizens.
That was just words from one that definitely has an impact, where he has over 14 to 15 million people that he's reaching out to Brian. Wait, let's see. I promise I'm not trying to get out of it. Okay. 15 million people, that's one of millions of stories that you hear. I mean, you look at them, they're all over the internet. That's okay. Anyway, if there's some information that if you want to go and view them, there's plenty of them there for you to review. Let's never forget that the gambling preys on the poor and on minority communities. It creates all kind of mental health services, gambling addicts, children and their families, and it increases citizens' dependence on welfare and Medicaid because they're spending all their money away, which will cost the state of Georgia more. Every dollar collected in revenues, you'll spend $7 in mental health services to rehab other families and the catastrophic destruction. Gambling has the highest suicide rate of any addiction. And, you know, we always hear, let's legalize it and regulate it. Well, should we also legalize sex trafficking that's happening in our state? You know, same story. So again, just touch on horse racing. It is a dying industry. They basically count on slot machines inside their racetracks in order to keep them above water because it's a dying breed. And I think, and it's gambling. So totally, we are all totally against it. So I wanted to go into some allies because these are the folks that are fighting hard. These are Georgians. These are people in Georgia. Moms Against Gambling, and we have people all over the state. And our goal, like I said, is to educate. You choose what you want, but let's educate the moms and dads. Please, I beg of you, every one of you, go home, look at your children's phones and their video games and watch out and warn, because the gambling apps are coming up on the video games. Frontline Policy, they are totally against it. Faith and Freedom Coalition, totally against it. And these are all they represent. Citizen Impact, you've heard from Paul. Eagle Forum of Georgia, Georgia Baptist, Mike Griffin, you've heard. And then there's millions of other people in this state that are against it. And even more millions that don't even know what this is happening in Georgia. Last but not least, the Georgian Republican Party opposes any expansion of commercialized gambling. It is one of their 2026 legislative initiatives. And this is their statement. And there's the link to tell you, go right to page 22. We oppose any expansion of gambling, including legalized casino gambling. We oppose and call for a veto of any budget that relies on the expansion of legalized gambling as a method of finance. So that was very important. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware from other comments in previous committees. Like I said, expansion of gambling, 1 out of 5 is addicted. It starts with irresponsible behavior and it's targeting our children. Casinos, we know, are bad news. Look at other states, bankruptcies. Let the people decide. Well, you've already had that conversation. We are here to educate you because government's number one job is to protect its citizens. If you do your research, you will find, and the research has been provided to you, you will see, and the numbers keep getting worse and worse. You will see how the addiction will be the next opioid crisis. And I'm not sure if you want to play a role in that. Let the people decide. So it's all for education. We talk about that. It's for the kids. We don't hear that much anymore. I didn't hear much of that last session, but it's always been for the kids. Georgia has $11 billion in surplus. It's fully fund Hope pre-K, kindergarten. But let's think about this. Another option, instead of legalizing gambling in Georgia, and if we really need the money, why don't we take and tax the Georgia lottery? If we tax the Georgia lottery and designates those funds specifically for pre-K or more educating people and opportunities in trade schools, because we know that's a big conversations now. 4-year degree is not a one size fits all for everybody, but you can be plumbers and welders, and make sure that they're aware of that, because that message, and then other educational programs. That's really, really important and a great alternative. I know that Representative Williams and I have known each other for a long time, being child advocates way back when we were trying to get a hold of the children working with at-risk kids, and trying to get a truancy center or something set up, which now we finally have Front Porch, which is helping kids. We got to focus on prevention. We really need to focus on prevention to help these kids. And I'm grateful for the governor and all of you representatives for the funding that is being allowed to help and target literacy, because that is a huge problem. In closing, never forget, online gambling has been a name changer because it's introduced to so many people right on their phone 24 hours a day. The people of Georgia deserve to know the whole truth. I've been told by our leaders in this state, Jeannie, educate the members, educate the members, educate the members. I know some of the stuff that I have said is redundant, but there is so much more. But the information that I have provided you today and previously, if you would please take the time and take all that information into consideration, because we don't want to. Do you want to be a part of the addiction that will, and the harm that will harm future Georgians and our kids by you choosing to legalize gambling here in the state of Georgia? Gambling expansion would forever change us. Thank you for your time. I apologize. I know I've gone over, and I'm sorry about the slide issues, but please, somebody ask me some questions. Please.
Representative Neal.
Well, since you're begging, thank you for coming. Thank you for your passion. So unlike the prior speaker, I just want to confirm, so you're not against the Georgia lottery?
Well, we already have it. Okay, and the slot machines is the worst addiction of any addiction in the nation. And we all know, going into the convenience stores, what we see in there. It's more of the lower income folks that are out there. I can tell you a quick story. I went into some of the convenience stores, And I asked the owners, how, what happens, about the slot machines? Do they do really well? This mother came in with her 3 children. She went to the slot machines, played the slot machines for a while. Then she went to buy some lottery tickets. Her children, he told me this story, swear to God, that her children asked if they could have a snack, and she told them, "No, honey, I don't have any money." That's what happened. I mean, we have it. It's done some wonderful things. I'm not going to deny it. So what I love, like I said, the slot machines, but if there's other ways that we can fund, and I have given you an alternative, and I had given one last year to the committee about other ways of raising funds without legalizing gambling, to make that as an excuse to harm Georgians by gambling money. And again, there are 3 facilities nationally, rehab facilities, that's it, that's designated only for addicted gamblers. And the resources aren't out there. And Rob, thank God Rob's out there, because he's having a huge impact. And I know they talk about putting additional money in there. We need to put a lot of money in there for the gambling addiction. Well, even if it's 1% of Georgians, that's one too many, if you ask me, because it could be any of our children and our families, or it could be you. So I'm sorry, I went on a little bit,
No,
but
it's okay.
did I answer your question?
Maybe indirectly, but
Okay.
but I just wanted to know, did you support the lottery and what
It's
the
done-
work that it has done?
It's done great things,
Okay.
but I don't support any expansion whatsoever.
Okay.
We have to make sure that their kids have the funding that they needed to get their education.
Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I do not see any other questions.
No? Okay. Thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And I wholeheartedly appreciate all that you're doing and taking your time to be here to listen to the stories about the harms of gambling. And I pray every day that none of these people in this room will be affected from the addiction of gambling, or any of your families. So thank you so much. And I am always free, and contact me at any time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Levant, did I say that correct? I knew I was going to go one way or the other with it.
Chair, if I don't just offer this small correction, my wife will forever be angry, because when I'm paying back in student loans to get the doctorate I just earned, it's actually doctor, but I prefer you call me Harry.
Appreciate it. Appreciate it.
We'll give you a poster and a pin, and then you start paying back. That's for the committee here another time. You did pronounce my last name correctly, and I appreciate it.
I've been butchered for 50 years, so I'm kind of used to it, but I am sensitive to butchering somebody else's.
Georgia. What's the slide on there? Eric, can you do it? Yeah.
While the PowerPoint is being set up, if I may, first just express my sincere gratitude to the chair and the members of the committee for affording me this opportunity. I told the receiver actually last week to fly down from Boston, I flew out of the teeth of a Norwegian at my own expense to come speak to you today. You've sort of ruined me, because I've been here about 24 hours and I'm not going back to Boston. This is weather. I mean, this is what they told me to get me to Boston. This is what they told me weather would be like in Boston all winter. Somehow I don't believe them. I also, before I began, I believe it's Representative Williams, I was moved by your comments about democracy, and particularly democracy in Georgia. I agree with you. You'll find no greater fan of democracy than myself. And at the end of the day, the people tend to get it right. And Georgia has shown that as a leader in this country. And I applaud your comments. But also, however, suggest to you respectfully that it is the role of this committee and the legislative body that you represent to decide when and how to put the issue to the people. And it is that second part of how to put this issue to the people that brings me here. My name is Harry Levant. I wear many hats, one of which is a gambling addict in recovery. I made my last bet on April 27th, 2014, survived a suicide attempt that night related to my gambling addiction. Gambling addiction took my brain, my heart, my mind, my soul, my conscience. It left me with nothing, frankly, but my name. I told Ms. Seaver that if I do my job right today, I'm going to upset a little bit of everybody in the room, including Ms. Seaver. First thing I'm going to say to you, same thing I said when I testified before the United States Senate Judiciary Committee back in December of 2024. I stand before you in favor of the properly regulated legalization of sports gambling. Say it again, in favor of the properly regulated legalization of sports gambling. However, it was mentioned earlier, 38, it's actually soon to be 39 states. What has actually happened in this country in just 7 years since the Murphy case was decided, clearing the way for this. Because Murphy didn't legalize this, as we all know. Murphy simply struck down PASPA and made it an option for states. It'll be 39 states by the end of this year, and the District of Columbia and the Territory of Puerto Rico. And what we have seen in that time is that online gambling has become a direct threat to public health, resulting in a mental health crisis in this country. And it doesn't have to be that way. What's causing it? And a number of you comment on the fact that there's only 11 states left, right? I admire the 11 states that still haven't addressed this, because you have an opportunity. I defer to your wisdom and the wisdom of the body that you represent to decide if, when, and how. But if you're going to do it, you must put this forward as an issue of public health. The narrative that has been brought to you by the gambling industry of this so-called responsible gaming model is harming people and families in ways across the country that are not yet fully understood. I told this story to 60 Minutes 2 years ago, and the executive producer said to me at the time, who else other than you and your two colleagues at the Public Health Advocacy Institute in Boston is talking about this as a public health issue? And I said, nobody. But a couple of years from now, it's not going to be that way. So I stand before you telling you you have an opportunity. And what I'd like to do in the time allotted is to show you why. And I'm not going to quote a lot of statistics. I'm going to walk you through the reality of how what was permitted by the United States Supreme Court in May of 2018 has become something vastly different, has become a partnership between gambling companies, sports leagues, teams, owners, and players, the world's largest media companies, all the way down to social media influencers, and state governments themselves, all making money off of what is a fundamentally dangerous and entirely different product than anyone expected. So you, as representatives of the legislative body, have an opportunity. And with a click of a finger and the cross of my other fingers, hoping technology serves me well, I'm going to walk you through what's really happening. And on the back end, I'm going to show you what you can do before you decide if, when, and where to put this issue before the people. Because if you're going to do it, you must do it as an issue of public health, respectfully. That's the oath you each took when you were sworn into office.
Dr.
We now have accessible on every phone, computer, and tablet, betting on every single micro event in every sporting event conceivable.
Sports gambling is a fundamentally different and more dangerous product than ever could have been imagined.
Harry Levant has been warning about what he sees as a growing public health crisis.
Before we sat down to do this interview, I looked on my phone. You can bet on ping pong from the Czech Republic on an average Wednesday morning.
I'm not really placing a bet on the game, am I?
You're placing a bet on a micro event within the game. You could do it within 15 seconds.
Tell me what that micro event is.
The result of every point in a ping pong contest between two players no one's ever heard of, that's what younger and younger people are betting on. I'm not trying to beat anybody. I'm trying to make it safe.
Levant learned his lessons the hard way. He's a recovering gambling addict.
Gambling addiction took my mind, my soul, body, and conscience.
You were a lawyer.
I'm a disbarred lawyer.
He had been stealing from his clients to cover his gambling debts. Levant caught a break with a sympathetic judge who, recognizing his addiction,
Placed me on probation for 8 years and ordered me to continue my treatment and said, this doesn't have to be the end. You can do something with this one day. People are getting hurt.
he's now a licensed therapist treating other gambling addicts. It's an expanding universe, he says. Close to $150 billion worth of legal sports bets placed last year alone.
Hey, you people of legal betting age.
The industry's best customers are young men. A Siena College Research Institute poll shows that almost half of men between the ages of 18 and 49 have an active online sports betting account. That actually raises an interesting question. In theory, you have to be 21.
In theory.
However,
I know a lot of people that are under the age of 18. They're 16, 15, and they're openly in school talking about all the wagers they got.
that's Sean, Andrew, and Brian. No last names here. They are recovering gambling addicts in treatment with Harry Levant. How do they do that?
Parents' information,
Siblings.
usually it's a social security number, might be a driver's license, then they're taking on that identity.
A lot of underage betting is happening on illegal or unregulated sites, but the legal sites haven't solved the problem either. Show me. And gambling addiction at any age, as Sean recalls, can be devastating.
This was my bed. When I was in the teeth of it, it's all that mattered. My marriage didn't matter. My job didn't matter. My daughters didn't matter. Gambling was the only thing that mattered.
Sound familiar?
Yes, sir.
Winning was nice, losing less so, but what counted was the action. Live betting online, anytime, anywhere.
Automatic, algorithmic, powered by machine learning and AI.
There's always something to bet on.
Simple
I
bet.
found out some cricket matches are 3 days because I bet on one and then
Same, dude.
I was waiting for it to end.
I did the same thing.
Yeah.
I've had my phone in the shower with me multiple times.
I got a waterproof case on my phone just so I can go in my shower. I did.
With the live betting, there's no casual person betting on every play.
To what Sean said, with live betting, there's no casual person. This is not a recreational based product. I stood in a courtroom in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania on February 13th, 2015, which was not unusual for me because I'd been practicing law for 23 years. 22 of them I remember fondly. The last year just obliterated in the haze of what can only be described as a pathological gambling addiction. So what was different about February 13th is I wasn't there as a lawyer, I was there as a defendant. And on that day, during my sentencing, I made a vow to the court that I had betrayed in front of the clients whose trust I had devastatingly violated. And in the presence of my 3 children with tears running down their faces, I made this promise. I said, if I can get well, and back in February of 2015, it was a very big if I could get well, I would spend the rest of my life doing what I can to prevent, emphasis on the word prevent, other people from suffering the same fate. I take that vow extraordinarily seriously. I spent 4 years in very intensive treatment before I realized I was well enough to go back to school, get a master's in counseling and psychology, become an internationally certified gambling addiction therapist. I treat people. And all due respect, I'm very good at it. I know what they're going through. And after doing that for a couple of years, I realized I wasn't honoring the vow that I made. And I hope I get some questions too. The one I get most often is if I had known in 2025, if I had known in 2015, what the world of gambling was going to look like in 2025, when I had been brazen enough to make that same vow, where we now have online gambling in every electronic device. I like to think I would have, but it's a very, very different world today. So I started treating people and I realized I'm actually, in a sort of ironic way, I'm helping people, but I'm benefiting off the growth of addiction. My practice is on a wait list. So I made a decision. I went back to school one more time. Went up to Boston,
get a doctorate at Northeastern University. And my doctorate is not in counseling and psychology. It's in public policy. And my research and my work, in addition to my work as a therapist, is around bringing a public health approach to this. And there's a very specific reason why. We have known for more than a dozen years that gambling is a full-fledged addictive product, just like heroin and opioids and tobacco and alcohol and cocaine. Worldwide, there is no debate on that scientific reality. As my colleague at PHAI, Professor Dick Daynard, says, it's the dopamine, not the dough. That's the reality of gambling addiction. And here's what we know. And I promised you, I'm not going to throw a bunch of statistics at you. I want to give you real life solutions today. But we talked earlier about how many states are doing this. And yes, as they do, the reports of people struggling with gambling harm and gambling addiction grow enormously. The statistics are in the PowerPoint. 300-time increases in states of call. And that's only the folks who have the courage to utter those three extremely valuable words: I need help. So let's just start with the reality that if online gambling is legalized, you are going to cause a public health issue. So we're going to have to figure out, if you're going to do this, how you do it and make it safe. Because prevention is the single best form of treatment, bar none. I'd like to put my therapy practice out of business. I'm not going to do it, but we can significantly make this safer. But you have to understand how we got to where we are, because you have the benefit of being 40th in line. And there's a lot that we know that we didn't know, and I'm going to prove it to you in 2018. But to understand it, you have to recognize where these words, responsible gaming, that this industry and the sports leagues are telling you about all the time, where'd they come from? They came from the early 2000s, when the gambling industry knew it wanted to expand. But it had a problem. Gambling has sort of been recognized as a condition, as an addiction. So the gambling industry went out and they paid on their own for a series of research studies. And I'll be more than happy to provide all of these studies to you if you'd like to read them. I'll be more than happy to talk about them anytime you want to talk about them. They're called the Reno model studies because the researchers met in Reno, Nevada. And they are a series of anecdotal reports, no quantitative data at all, anecdotal reports that create the responsible gaming model that has 4 principles that are on the board in front of you now. I'm going to disregard the first one because I've already told you I'm in favor of properly regulated legalization. Principle 2. The gambling industry and government share a duty to warn the public. Principle 3, each person, at the end of the day, has to make their own responsible decisions. And then principle 4, look what a good job the industry says we're doing. So few people ever get hurt. And for those unfortunate few, we will give the state money to pay for treatment. The moral equivalent of big tobacco saying to you, let us market our cigarettes any way we want, as long as we pay for chemotherapy and hospice. The moral equivalent of Budweiser saying, we'll set up the rehab centers. You wouldn't tolerate it, with all due respect, with those addictive products. It's being sold to you as the state-of-the-art model with gambling, and it is fundamentally wrong, because prevention is the best form of treatment. Prevention requires public health regulation before you bring this, to the citizens of Georgia. With every other addictive product, I ask everyone in the room to think of anyone you like. With every other addictive product, government seeks to regulate the advertising, the distribution, the promotion, and the consumption. For a simple reason, to protect the public. With gambling, the exact opposite is true. States were lining up to become financial partners. And let me at this moment say, I have tremendous empathy for the extremely difficult task you and the other members of the legislature have to balance your budget. I understand these are extraordinary times, whatever side of an aisle you're on. But unleashing a public health crisis is not how you solve a budget problem. You dive into this issue and you understand what's about to happen to you, because with every other addictive product, you wouldn't permit it. With gambling, you're about to endorse, and there it is on the board, what the American Gaming Association calls the responsible gaming model. Just here's our product. Now just use it responsibly. Look at what DraftKings puts. This is right from DraftKings' website.
It's on there right now. There are 10 principles of responsible gaming. Every one of those 10 puts the onus right back on the individual. I highlighted 2 for you intentionally, particularly the one where DraftKings encourages users. Don't use our product when you're drinking. Now I'm going to show you what DraftKings promotes on social media. DraftKings Instagram feed. I just moved from Philadelphia to Boston earlier this year. I heard Go Birds. I'm supposed to say Go Birds, but you would all know I don't really mean it. What we're witnessing is the complete normalization of an addictive product. We wouldn't permit this with any other. There's the big green monster from Fenway Park. That's what every 9-year-old sees when they walk into a sports arena. And we've seen this before. This is exactly what the tobacco industry did to us for decades. There's Joe Camel from 1988, making it as cool as possible to smoke cigarettes. We've seen this before.
Like just go down the row, whether each of you believes that nicotine is not addictive. I heard virtually all of you touch on it, and just yes or no. Do you believe nicotine is not addictive?
I believe nicotine is not addictive, yes.
Mr. Johnston.
Congressman, cigarettes and nicotine clearly do not meet the classic definitions of addiction. There is no intoxication.
We'll take that as a no. And again, time is short. If you could just, I think each of you believe nicotine is not addictive. We just would like to have this for the record.
I don't believe that nicotine or our products are addictive.
I believe nicotine is not addictive. I believe that nicotine is not addictive. I believe that nicotine is not addictive. And I too believe that nicotine is not addictive.
We've seen this before.
Ancient Egyptians bet on chariot racing, ancient Greeks on the OG Olympics, and Americans have been betting on which horse can run fastest for over 350 years. But
gambling is a fundamentally different product. The human brain's not built to absorb an addictive product at light speed like that. But that's the new business model. Addiction is an addiction just like heroin and opioids and tobacco and alcohol and cocaine.
Bill Miller is the president of the American Gaming Association, the gambling industry's trade organization.
This is an addictive product.
Know that it is. I think
You don't think it is?
No, I don't think it is. No, I think that phones are addictive. There are a very small number of people who have challenges with sports betting and or gambling.
It's the gambling industry's words. Ms. Siebert told you about the Lancet study. I threw a couple of slides in for you because what the Lancet study actually tells you is if you're going to do this, recognize the magnitude of the harm extends so far beyond financial harm, and it urges legislative bodies worldwide to bring a public health model to this. That's what Lancet's asking us to do. Lancet's not saying don't legalize gambling. Gambling's been around since the dawn of time. First cave person invents the first wheel. There's some schmuck 3 caves down laying 3 to 1. It ain't going to work. And gambling will be around when the sun explodes. But if you're going to do this, recognize you are unleashing a public health issue where 1 out of every 2 people, the statistics show, who struggles with gambling disorder contemplates. 1 out of every 5 makes an attempt. I'm one of those 5. For people under 25, the risk is even higher.
Addiction every bit as all-consuming as drug addiction, and even more consequential. 1 in 5 problem gamblers will attempt suicide. That's the highest rate of any addiction. You considered suicide?
Yes, sir. I was going to give it a shot. I was calm about it. I accepted it. I wanted to do it. I personally had a letter written out So yes, it was gonna happen. And thankfully, my dad called the authorities up here. And just before I could my life, I got a knock on the door.
Police knocked down his door and saved his life just before he killed himself. I'm very happy to tell you, last week he started working in a rehab center, helping other people who struggle with addiction. Police had to knock down his door. Here's what the gaming industry, they don't even call themselves gambling. Here's what the gaming industry tells you.
Responsible and that are anti-gambling, they would like to lump it all into some dynamic that is similar to the tobacco companies. I find that absolutely abhorrent and offensive. An industry that 9 out of 10 Americans believe is an appropriate entertainment form is being compared to something that kills people. That's not appropriate.
Well, but gambling addiction does lead to the most suicide attempts of any addiction. If you're talking about killing people.
Yeah, I mean, don't know that that's true.
So how'd you get here? You got here because sports leagues that were vehemently opposed to this did an about face, as we knew they would after the Murphy case. I understand it. It's a business model here. But what we found state after state after state didn't realize is the financial relationship between the leagues and the gambling companies, which is at the epicenter of this inherently dangerous product. Here's the very first sports bet.
The first 2 legal sports bets in the history of the state. The first of millions to come.
New Jersey's governor took the fight to the Supreme Court to legalize sports gambling.
$20 for Germany to win the World Cup. $20 for the Devils to win the Stanley Cup.
He lost $40. Also, perhaps a sign of things to come.
Governor Murphy bet on the New Jersey Devils in June of 2018 to win the 2019 Stanley Cup, a wager that would take 11 months to decide. What you are contemplating now is wagering that takes place every 11 seconds or faster. And here is how they do it. They sell their statistics for tens of billions of dollars to the gambling industry. The gambling industry then uses artificial intelligence to turn those statistics into non-stop micro betting opportunities. And I don't ask you to believe me, believe the industry itself.
Sports are comprised of moments. Fans live for them. So that's where we exist. Joe steps up, takes off. We drive fan engagement by making every moment of every game a betting opportunity. Automatic, algorithmic, powered by machine learning and AI.
It's called taking it to the house. It's Nicole Hartman, the rookie.
This isn't about overs, unders, lines, or spreads. This is about raising the stakes on moments fans live for. It's that simple. Simple bet.
It's machine versus the citizens of Georgia. And you know who's going to lose? It's not going to be the machine. That company, Simple Bet, DraftKings just bought them. They own the technology to deliver AI-driven micro betting. And you know what they told Wall Street? They told Wall Street, that's what we're going to do. There it is on your board. We now have the technology to target people who have the proclivity to engage in that type of gambling. The NCAA is now doing it. Micro betting on what college kids do. And here's the problem. They all want to eat. Who doesn't want pie, right? But this pie only has one ingredient, and that's the losses of the citizens of the state of Georgia. That's the business model. And when an industry tells you who they are, believe them, because they do in fact tell you exactly who they are. Listen to how FanDuel describes this product that you're contemplating.
That phrase never sounded quite right, because no part of football is meaningless. So while some folks see garbage, FanDuel sees treasure. Easy spreads to cover, overs to hit, and chances to live bet from the first down to the final whistle. So don't just watch football this season, cherish it.
Bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. FanDuel, America's #1 sports book.
DraftKings goes a step further. They pay an extraordinarily wealthy person to come into your home and show you how to do this.
On DraftKings.
They got it all.
Oh, man, money lines, spreads,
That's type of bucket. Two-handed slam.
and all kinds of player props.
Play on, player.
And the overs. I mean, look, they got over on this and over on that too.
Kevin, the play's about to start.
I got it in. Okay, now quit yapping about live betting while I'm live betting.
You bet. With the most markets to bet live, DraftKings is the #1 sportsbook for live betting. We get you. So we got that. New customers turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets. The crown is yours.
It's a fundamentally different product. And here's what you need to recognize. For every person who struggles, 8 to 10 family members and friends are also suffering harm. So here's what you can do if you decide to move forward. 1, affordability checks. We already have them. You go into a car dealership, you're going to buy yourself a 2022 Ford Taurus. That's what your budget can afford. But there's that beautiful, shiny 2026 Mustang convertible. You want that Mustang. You need that Mustang. You can't have that Mustang. There's a credit manager and a bank and a sales manager standing in your way to protect you from getting over your head. We have no such thing with gambling. I don't want you to put your hands in the pockets of the citizens of Georgia. I want you to say to the gambling industry, look, somebody wants to wager more than $1,000 a night or $10,000 in a month, we in the industry have to run an affordability check to make sure that a bank would extend an unsecured loan similar to that. We have the technology to do it. Let's protect people before they get in over their head. Let's find out what the value of these sports data deals are. In the PowerPoint for you is an interview with the NFL where they're directly asked, how much do you make off of this? And they refuse to answer the question. This legislative body should have that information. Let's regulate, not ban, let's regulate advertising. It's within your purview to regulate local advertising, which is where the majority of sports gambling advertising takes place. Credit cards. Absolutely not. If you're going to do this, people should not be permitted to gamble borrowing money at 37%. And DraftKings is telling you, we just stopped taking credit cards. It's not true. People just route it through Venmo where they apply their credit card. You cannot permit credit cards to fund gambling. You must understand the role of artificial intelligence. AI is targeting the citizens of Georgia with a known addictive product. And the single biggest thing you can do is what they're now trying to do in New Jersey, what Minnesota decided to do and the industry decided to pull back, what's being looked at in New York and in Massachusetts, a ban on in-game betting. Bet all you want before a game starts. But once that whistle blows, no more in-game betting, chasing more and more action. And oh, by the way, did you know a 9-year-old can download the app? Why? Why can a 9-year-old download DraftKings app? Why should we be exposing them to that level of normalcy? Let's join with the NCAA and end player prop bets. And let's work together with the gambling industry to eliminate offshore sports books. So I'll close with this. I'm not sure, it may have been Representative Williams, it may have been another member of the committee, said, well, the money goes offshore. It's simply not true. And here's why it's not true. I have demonstrated for you that what you are contemplating today is a partnership between the gambling industry, the sports leagues, and media, all fueled by the sports leagues selling their data. The offshore sports books do not have access to this data. They can't do micro betting. Micro betting is what's hurting people. The gambling industry has created a false boogeyman. If you don't legalize it, it's going offshore. It's simply not true. Now, you want to have a conversation about tax revenue with your neighboring states? That's a legitimate conversation. But the offshore boogeyman is not. And I now want to finish simply with this. I need you to understand that this is not about my story. It's not. It's about the totality of people who are going to be hurt. This week, I am proud to launch the Mothers Against Drunk Driving for Gambling. It's called FOG, Family and Friends of Gamblers. It'll become a nationwide advocacy organization. The acronym is actually FOG, but if you do as much public speaking as I do and you mispronounce FOG, you can get in for trouble real fast. So we call it FOG. How's that? That's how I got a doctorate. I want you to just listen to the family and friends, because this is where the real issue is.
Don't do that.
Just out of curiosity, if you're trying to play a video, how long is it? Because we're running up on time.
Then I will stop. I will submit the video to you from the fam.
I was in
It's
the
3
kitchen
minutes.
opening
You want me
mail
to stop it and take your
innocently
questions, or want it to go?
and
I do
opened
have a
the
couple. You have a
letter
couple
addressed
questions.
to my husband.
You need me to stop in the middle? You let me know. I'll
It was
stop.
a loan
I'd like you to see
in his
this.
name. And I remember thinking, this can't be right. I was in the dark. That my husband has gambled since high school over $1 million.
We had no idea what was going on. We just didn't know.
I had no idea it was going on.
Absolutely no idea. None. It really was just happening right under my nose.
It's a silent disease.
It's very secretive.
Nobody wants to talk about it.
It's very easy to hide.
My entire life was crushed.
I am the father of a gambling addict.
I'm the mother.
I am the mother.
Our son,
My husband is in recovery for compulsive gambling.
I am a child of a gambler. I'm from a family that is mostly gamblers. We don't drink, we don't smoke, but there's a lot of gambling.
Lives and families are being destroyed. Andrew had been doing some betting on football games.
We've spent 10 years enabling his addiction and not really realizing it. They prey on people, going after those who are most vulnerable, being able to bet on every play, every second.
So easily accessible in his
You
pocket.
can't get away from.
The ability for AI to track you and chase you and find you.
He didn't know how to parent that.
He wanted the help. He wanted out, and he couldn't escape.
He was ready to be done with life.
Some studies say 1 in 5 problem gamblers will attempt to take their lives. I never will get over the loss of my son. There's hardly a 15-minute block in any day where I don't think about him.
You always think that you should have known, or maybe it's your fault.
It made me question my judgment of others, my ability to read others.
It's painful. It's very lonely. There's a lot of shame. All I kept thinking in my head is like, my family is burning to the ground.
We have been hurt. Our son has been hurt, and we're not the only ones.
The gambling industry doesn't even acknowledge the harm to the family and friends of gamblers. But in fact, these are some of the most harmed and largest numbers of victims who have been underrepresented and uncounted. They need to be heard from as well.
This is a problem. This is a crisis.
This is a crisis.
This is a public health crisis. Gambling is an addictive substance on the same level as heroin and opioids and tobacco. Someone has to step forward and say, wait a minute, we need some guardrails.
The gambling industry has proven that it is incapable of regulating itself.
In the short years from 2018, we have seen an exponential rise in problem gambling.
We need policy change.
Families and friends of gamblers. FOG will expose the harm that is taking place because of the gambling industry's conduct.
You can't watch a game on TV. It's constant ads.
It's like 24/7 sitting in
yeah.
a bar when you're an alcoholic. You don't have a chance.
People who can't be put on a mortgage can put gambling on a credit card at 50% interest.
FOG is your organization, built by and powered by the families and friends of gamblers to bring public health regulation to the out-of-control gambling industry. There ought to be some guardrails placed. There ought to be something that regulates it. When our elected officials understand the harm that is being suffered, this will move policy.
People need to be held accountable.
We've got to stand up and we've got to call it out.
Change needs to happen.
Your voices matter. Your stories matter. The hurt you have suffered matters. Together we can and will
make change.
I close by offering you that opportunity and invite your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Hatchett.
Thank you, Chairman. We are, Dr. Levant, I haven't said a lot in any of these meetings, but your presentation is probably the best presentation I've seen.
And
I want to thank you for coming to us with definitions of problems and issues. And you also, because I hit my button early on, because you said you supported it with the proper regulatory guidelines. And I was going to say, okay, give us those. Well, you took a little longer to get them, but thank you for giving. I think you get that last slide before the file presentation went through what you consider to be proper regulations of gaming. So I hope I've understood your presentation, and I think that's what you did. And I just thank you for doing that, highlighting solutions.
I thank you for those very kind and generous words, and I will come back. I will take any opportunity to communicate with you, members of your staff, members of the entire legislative body. You're in a difficult position. So many complex issues around this, but it is so much bigger than should we put this to the people. It's what you're going to put to the people.
You brought the facts.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I gambled for 30 years. I'm going to come up here and tell you I'm opposed to gambling. It's be ridiculous. I'm a public policy advocate. I meant what I said. I want to be able to shut my practice down. Let people enjoy gambling. And if we had more time, there's more things I could show you. The easiest way to summarize it, it costs these gambling companies tens of billions, if not more, to acquire the data from every league imaginable. From NASCAR, I kid you not, to badminton around the world. They're buying all of this real-time data. It costs a ton of money. There's only one way to get that money back. They're not selling any widgets in the marketplace. They're only generating money one way, and that's to get people to gamble more quickly, more often, and more highly addictive products. I'm not telling you whether it's good or bad. I'm simply coming forward and honestly telling you that's the business model in 2025. That's what you need to be debating. And if you think I have some expertise that I can share, I'm happy to engage in that discussion.
There's a couple of questions. I have one real quick. Of the states that have allowed it, do you see a state that's done it right?
Not yet, because they didn't know what you know today. I can tell you there are states that are looking at many of the changes we're talking about. Members of the legislative body in New Jersey have introduced a bill to ban microbetting. In Massachusetts, there's a bill pending called the Better Health Act. Minnesota put the brakes on. A Republican Senator Rasmussen in Minnesota inserted into the enabling legislation a ban on in-game betting, and the gambling industry pulled back there. New York, I've been engaged with, where they're looking at introducing a bill. What I am seeing, Mr. Chair, is that states are realizing we didn't get it right, and now they're playing catch up. That's what I'm seeing.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for the question.
Rep. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to echo Chairman Hatcher. You've had very interesting conversation, and I'm not going to ask you to do it now, but when you get a chance, read what King Agrippa had to say to Paul at some point. But let me just say this. In December, Nickel G will have the NCAA in Puerto Rico, and it was because of the actions of Nickel G and one other group that we're taking another look at the situation with sports gambling and students in the portal in particular. But your example of the Taurus and the Mustang probably got my attention better than any. And the affordability factor. That's an interesting concept. I don't want you to talk about it today. You're a great lawyer, and I know you got 15 minutes.
I'm a former lawyer, but I understand.
You're still a
great lawyer.
You're not licensed. You're still a great lawyer. So don't explain it now.
That's very kind.
But I think that's an interesting concept. I can't walk in and buy something without a credit check. You shouldn't be able to really, I'm not saying that I totally agree with you, but it's an interesting concept to look at. But thank you for your testimony.
I will discuss it with you anywhere, anytime. Simply extend the invitation. My answer will be yes.
Rep Neal.
Yes, thank you to the chair. Thank you for your presentation. And yes, I do like same with my colleagues for not only for anyone to be against a measure, but also provide solutions. But I did have a few comments in reference to some of the things you mentioned that I wanted to briefly review. So one question I did have, and we can, I guess, delve into it offline, but I did want to know if your company did any work in reference to the forward-facing work in relation to like self regulation. Like for myself, when I went to Vegas, I had a $20 limit. That was for me, and I lost that $20 and won 5 cents. And I like shoes. And I'm like, if I do more than this and keep losing at this rate, I can't buy more shoes. So I self-regulated. And I think what's missing in this conversation is self-regulation. I do understand that people have addictions. We all have vices. But we got to be careful that we don't judge someone else's poison because it's different from our own. Some people are addicted to food, shopping, exercise. You know, you do something too much in excess, it can harm you. So just being careful about, you know, being selective in what one's vice may be is a little bit problematic. And then also too, it's my belief, and the chair can correct me if I'm wrong, this committee has never failed to acknowledge addictions. And I don't think we've had testimony from anyone in the gaming industry that it didn't acknowledge addictions. I think we've done a lot of work in past versions to make sure we had regulations and cooling off periods and all these different things that we tried to work into the bill. So I want to make sure that I reference that in reference to some of the comments that were made today. And only one thing I did have concern with, and I'm sure that we can dive into it. I know my colleague mentioned an interest. I am a little concerned about the government overreach in reference to like credit checks or something of the sort, because we have to remind ourselves this is a game, and the public and adults have free will. And I don't want to be out of order, but for instance, no one does a credit check before you go into a strip club. And so, you know, when we are, you know, choosing what we want to become enraged about, we have to consider everything when we're going on this journey of crafting this bill.
I look forward to a more substantive discussion. If I may just within 15 seconds respond to the last piece of what you said, reference to a strip club. You can't drink $1,000 of vodka in one night. There'll be visible manifestations. With one click of your thumb, you can gamble $1,000 you didn't have. And there are ways that we can make this safer. I agree with you. Credit checks are not the way that I would do it. I don't think they would be culturally insensitive. What I'm trying to do here is refocus on the nature of the product, because one of your colleagues pointed out the overwhelming majority of people can enjoy this product recreationally. 85% of the revenue comes from the 15% of people who gamble the most. And that's what the product I demonstrated for you today is designed for. You're describing recreational gambling. As a former gambling addict, I used to look at people like you who could spend $20. You know what I used to call them? Freaks. How can you do that? That's not possible. We share the same view about that. I'm trying to move the focus to the nature of the product so that people who are struggling can be protected. We share the joint responsibility there, and I look forward to a greater conversation. Thank
Powell.
Yeah. Dr. Luann, I want to tell you how much I appreciate your testimony after listening to the other stuff today. And I don't mean that to be disparaging about anybody else that had spoke this morning, but I do appreciate your comments. For someone who has been active over the years about looking at all of these different issues on gaming and gambling and such like that, you know, I never was real big about the sports betting because I don't bet on sports. You know, we used to go to a bookie in my day when I was in college. You know, you knew what your limit was. You either paid it or you didn't pay it. And then the consequences wasn't real good. But we live in a society today, and it's all based. It's technology based. And it's all the things that, you know, y'all talked about the sports. I think I heard everybody here today talk about sports betting. Yeah, I'm not real big about it. I think a lot of the sports folks, they kind of left me alone over the years because I was more of an advocate of giving people a choice. A brick and mortar structure for destination resorts is something that would benefit the state of Georgia. Not sure my take about sports betting. This society that we live in, and we've always lived in an addictive society. You know, my friend just talked about free will. You know, strip clubs. There's no bigger form of gambling I know of than playing the stock market, especially if you're a day trader. And that's the biggest thrill in the world. I almost got hooked into that a few years ago that I couldn't go an hour of that checking the stock market. And then finally, I just one day said, whoa, I got more important things to do than life than to do this. But, you know, that's gambling. But, you know, I heard a lot of things in here today, and I want to give a little bit of to the committee members. I want to say a few things about the gambling issue that we dealt with a few years ago. Former Speaker Ralston had assigned a committee, and we had 3 co-chairs. It was myself, Ron Stevens next to me, Economic Development, and former member Brett Harrell, who was Ways and Means Chairman. And we did a comprehensive study. We went around the state. I can't even remember how many places we went to and how much testimony we took. And we had been very specific about what we were trying to get to because we knew 7 years ago that we had a majority of people who kept saying, we want the right to vote, once it was explained to them. Now, I differ from the first guy that spoke this morning. I'm really quite shocked that him being the former chief of staff of the Massachusetts Senate questions people's right to vote. But that explains Massachusetts to me a little bit more in depth today. But it's the duty of this committee, if we're going to do it, put it forth. People need to know what they're going to be voting for. Now, specifically what you had talked about in this stuff with the sports betting. You know, I heard a lot of what you said about the controls. There's only so many controls that can be put on. Back 7 years ago, we had a very comprehensive gaming commission that would have been established to control a lot of this stuff, to pass rules and regs. I don't know with technology the way it is today that short of the U.S. Congress passing legislation to restrict this advertising stuff and those type of things, I don't know that a state can do that because everything is offshore. It's the most dangerous thing that has been the most biggest addiction that I know of. This is far more addicting than gambling, that people live with these things. They can't live, they can't breathe if they don't have that cell phone handy. And, you know, so how do we go about that? And that would be reach out to the U.S. Congress to pass legislation to deal with the advertising mechanisms that have made the sports betting, apparently according to everybody's testimony, so prevalent today. I feel sad for these folks. You know, I heard the young man who talked about being 18 years old and he was college bound and he got drawn into it, you know, to the fact that he had to take off and take a hiatus to go to Australia. Probably it sounded to me more to evade the bookies, but then he was going to Paris and he was doing all of these things. But at the end of the day, it's called actions and consequences. That's part of what free will that my colleague had talked about a while ago. So
showing a little bit of respect.
No.
I'm telling you, a little bit respect for that addict that was here. That is a total insult. And I am feeling totally insulted that you sit there and say that I didn't give you factual information, sir. You don't care about kids. You don't care about addiction. Don't give me.
Ms. Seaver, please. Your point's made. Your point's made. You can ask him for that apology. Okay, you can ask him for that apology. Your comments are noted. Please come back to order. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I forgot my train of thought to the gentleman, Dr. Levant. I will address that. Not apologizing for something I didn't say. I didn't say anything to insult you, ma'am. You know, y'all had a right to say what you said, and I understand that. I understand your concern with gambling. But I listened to the young man talk, and to me, it all goes back to someone needs to understand our societal changes today. That all these young folks, they think that everything is give to them. You know, my generation, we were told you don't live above your means. My daddy always told me a gambler's money's got no home. That's the reason I never had that issue with it. And I'm sorry that if you were offended, because there was no offense intended at what I had said. You know, y'all have a right to take your position on this. Now, when we were dealing with this issue a few years ago, we were looking at all forms of gambling. You know, horse racing, I heard the antis about the horse racing a dying. The reason horse racing is a dying sport is because it's not close enough to folks. I don't care about horse racing, get online to bet on a horse race. I like to watch it on TV because I'm not going to drive to Kentucky very often to see it. But you know, that has always been an age-old national sport. Destination resort casinos. You know, the stick that casinos have gotten is that, well, it's about gambling. No, it's not. The casinos are corporate owned now. You'll never see another Las Vegas. You don't see the organized crime. You see corporate America that owns the casinos. And they don't rely on the gambling in the casinos for their profits. They make their money off of the rooms that they don't comp anymore, the recreational stuff that they do. And that's the stuff we'd put up. So what you talked about the sports betting, I appreciate that. But I think that everybody needs to realize that those issues to regulate that stuff needs to come from the next form up, and that would be the Congress of the United States.
Chairman, it respectfully, it can be both. And full disclosure, I wrote a significant portion of a bill that is pending in Washington called the Safe Bet Act. And the Safe Bet Act is predicated on creating minimum federal safety standards, which is what I hear you calling for, and I joined that call. But then saying to the states, you know your people the best. If you want to have greater safety standards, you're free to do that as well. I think there's a partnership. And very, very, very quickly, within what you were just saying, I found great commonality in that you referenced the need to balance interests here. If I had pixie dust right now, I would take all of us to a neighboring state where online sports gambling is legal. And I would treat us all to burgers at a sports bar. And I would sit there with you and I would demonstrate for you, not making any bets myself, I would let you do that, how this product actually works. Because when you see it and experience it in action, then, sir, you can do what you're describing right now, which is figuring out how to balance the interests and protect the people of Georgia, whatever they may decide from a public health perspective. That would join us all together. And I'm very sincere in that. If you want any one of you, any member of your staff, I would sit down and do that. It's a great way to answer questions. I've done it with other elected officials. I've done it with journalists. I don't ask you to necessarily agree. I ask you to understand the product. Then, Mr. Chairman, then we can balance the interests appropriately. That's what this committee needs to do before it moves forward.
Stevens.
Very short. I know, Mr. Chairman, we're at the end of our meeting here, but I just wanted to thank you for laying out probably as best as anybody I've heard in all these years, a plan. So if you ever become I know you're a recovering gambleaholic, if that's a word, but I appreciate you coming and giving us that perspective, but even more a plan for the pit holes or the pitfalls that we might fall into. If you ever become away from a recovering lawyer again, I'd like to get your card. You're making quite a case. So thank you for coming in front of us.
Listen, I tell people, you hear the words recovering lawyer. I don't recommend my particular pathway to happiness. It was pretty ugly there for a while. But when you get to that spot that you're doing what you were always supposed to do, this is a privilege. I get to come before you and offer an opportunity to help people. That's your comments. I'm touched by them. Thank you.
Yes. Dr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Chair. A quick question. Did you already supply the recommendations for regulations to us?
I was asked for a copy of the PowerPoint, which I will provide now. There were videos in it, so I couldn't email it. I will make that available. I've written about it other places. Anything you want, I'll give it all to you, whatever I can help with.
Thank you very much. And I appreciate you being here today.
It was my privilege. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. All right, we are short on time. If there is somebody that absolutely has to say something, you are welcome to. I don't want to close the door on that. However, I do want to make 2 announcements and then close us out. Any takers? Public comment. All right. Committee, there is lunch for those of you that are hearing and hungry. There is lunch for us after. I do want to, for anybody got really excited in earlier testimony, it is illegal to bet with your friends in the state of Georgia. It is a misdemeanor. But OCGA 16-12-21, it is illegal. So anyway, just before you guys go out there wanting misdemeanors, just to set the record straight on that. And in parting, I'd like everybody here to continue to be with the Ballinger family as they go through the next couple of days. But with that, we will stand adjourned. Thank you.